There's a lot of big names and superstars in the UFC right now, and they get spoken about all the time, but there are some fighters on the UFC roster that don't get spoken about at all, and not nearly enough. I'm going to go through those fighters right now and shine a spotlight on them. These are my top 5 most underrated fighters in the UFC right now, and they are all currently active and competing. I'm going to start at number 5, I'm going to finish with number 1, and I'm going to tell you guys why I think they're in that position on the list. These are some really good fighters that don't get nearly enough credit. Starting with number 5 on my list, his name is Beneil Dariush. Pay attention to this man because he's slowly going through the division and he has some losses in his career. But one thing I want to mention about this, guys, because no one talks about him the way they do other contenders in the division. I feel like people mention Alia Quinta's real estate career more than they do Beneil Dariush's UFC career. He is slowly beating really good guys back to back. He's currently on a 5-fight win streak in the lightweight division over Thiago Moises, who's a dangerous guy right now, who just beat Michael Johnson. Drew Dober as well, who's a dangerous guy right now, who's beaten great opponents in his career, including Alexander Hernandez, who also beat Beneil Dariush. So that's kind of like a little bit of a comeback fight for Beneil Dariush to go out there and not just beat Drew Dober, but finish him as well. Moving on, beats Frank Camacho, not so much of a big name, but Drakkar Klose, a dangerous up-and-coming contender. Beneil Dariush goes right through him. Scott Holtzman, a dangerous contender, beat Jim Miller, who's still a dangerous guy and was back then when Holtzman beat him very badly, of course. Beneil Dariush beat him like it was nothing, spinning back fist KO. I mean, the way he's doing things, highlight reel KO against Drakkar Klose, and no one's mentioning his name. And even I'll say this, you look at the Beneil Dariush versus Edson Barboza fight, a lot of people talk about that one and they only remember the knee that Edson Barboza landed on Dariush. They don't remember the one-sided kind of beating that Dariush was putting on Barboza before Barboza landed that brutal knee. And don't get me wrong, it's a very nice knee. But after seeing what Barboza's been doing recently to people in the first and second rounds especially of their fights, okay, don't get me wrong, Barboza's a dangerous guy and he beats a lot of guys. But one thing that nearly no one does other than Justin Gaethje, and maybe a select other few in UFC history, is really take it to him in the first and second round. A lot of people look to try and wear him down. If they can't get him to the ground, no one, rarely anyone, who isn't amazing and gets all the credit in the world, takes it to Barboza in the first and second and beats him at his own game on the feet. And Beneil Dariush outlanded him 28-16 on significant strikes in the first round, 23-14 on significant strikes in the second round, and that's not including the finishing, that's including, the finishing sequence from Barboza, where he landed a couple of follow-up shots after the knee, so he was actually losing more than that before the big shot landed. But I will say this, Beneil Dariush is so underrated, and I don't understand why. He was the original chin taker of James Vick. He made James Vick's impressive highlight reel KO loss streak possible. He was the guy who loosened the jar, if you will, okay? A lot of people give credit to Justin Gaethje and Dan Hooker and Nico Price for their amazing KOs over James Vick. None of those would have been possible whatsoever if Beneil Dariush didn't take James Vick to the Shadow Realm's front doorstep and leave him on the mat waiting after a good knock. You know what I mean? He had to take James Vick to the gates of the Shadow Realm. All these other guys, yeah, they tipped him over the edge and put him within there, and all the memes got made, but Beneil Dariush was the real guy who took the chin of James Vick and made his impressive career of KO losses possible. Like, I really do respect him. He's lost to good opponents. He's beat Michael Johnson himself. He's beat Jim Miller. He beat Diego Ferreira, who right now is ranked above him in the lightweight division. I mean, he's so underrated. He beat Anthony Rocco Martin, who right now is top 20 in the welterweight division. Like, he's beat great guys throughout his entire career, and no one gives him credit. But moving on up the list to my number 4 guy that is very underrated in the UFC, I'll get to him right now. It is Glover Teixeira. No one talks about this old man, but listen, you sleep on this old man, and Grandpa Glover will teach these young whippersnappers a lesson. Don't you sleep on him, okay? Because Glover Teixeira gets no credit, and I give Glover Teixeira no credit. So I'm not going to sit here and say that, just before we get into the rest of the video, I'm not going to say that I don't do the same things. I'm guilty of doing this as well. I pick against Glover almost every single time because it's Glover Teixeira. He's Grandpa Glover. He's not going to do too much. Like, he's going to get KO'd in the first round, of course, because he's been KO'd lots of times before. And his chin's gone, and he's an old man, and he doesn't have the grit anymore. But he seems to be going out there And not just fluking his way through victories, grinding out and out-hustling younger competition. That just goes to show what he is. Fair enough if you're an older guy in the heavyweight division and you still got that one-punch KO power, and you can get by with just landing the big shot, and you're still a bit old, but you've got the big shot and maybe you can bounce back now and again. It's a whole different story to beat Glover and have to grind your way and basically break the wills of younger, talented competition that are way more hungry than you. It just shows how hard Glover is training at the end of his career. He's a dangerous man. He doesn't seem to have skipped a beat recently either. Yes, he has some losses to Corey Anderson, Alexander Gustafsson, Anthony Rumble Johnson, Phil Davis, John Jones. Like, I think we can give him some breaks there. That's a real good list of competition. But he also has some amazing wins that people don't talk about. His most recent win streak is a win streak of 4. All of them, I believe, were ranked at the time other than Roberson and Kutalaba. I mean, he beat Smith, destroyed him, absolutely obliterated him, finished him, which is something that John Jones couldn't do, but no one talks about that. Finished Anthony Smith, was the first guy to do it, the most impressive guy to beat Anthony Smith, in my opinion. I mean, just completely tore him to shreds on the ground and completely dominated him. Yes, he had a tough first round, but he's Glover Teixeira. You know, he comes back in the later rounds. Glover Teixeira even beat Nikita Krylov, who's a dangerous guy, just beat Johnny Walker. Doesn't get too much credit for that. Yes, it was a razor-close fight, but Glover got it done. Close decision, out-gritted Nikita Krylov in very key moments. I just like Glover Teixeira's game, man. You go through the list. Ion Kutalaba, Carl Roberson. Young guys, hungry guys, up and coming that should really be basically winning the lottery in a matchup against Glover Teixeira, who's coming off of some KO losses in his career and is a little bit older. That's who you want, ideally, right? If you're the young guy coming up, give me Glover Teixeira. No, he's going to beat you up real bad. Beat Misha Serkinov, beat Jared Cannonier, okay? 4 years ago, yes, and maybe in a different division, and maybe Cannonier's better at middleweight, but still, beat Jared Cannonier. You know, like, these things happen. Beat Rashad Evans by KO in the first round. Beat Patrick Cummins. Beat Ovin St. Preux, who's still relevant right now in the light heavyweight division. And by the way, around the similar time where John Jones took OSP to a decision, Teixeira annihilated him by rear naked choke in the third round and did very well before then, took him down a bunch of times and basically dominated him. But still, is that not enough for you guys? KO'd Ryan Bader in the first round. Beat Quinton Rampage Jackson. These are good wins, no? But still, no one gives Glover the credit. And if he beats Santos, first of all, it's an embarrassment to the division. Even though I've just said all of that stuff. An older guy should not be doing this, but it just goes to show how good Glover is. He could win the title, guys. That's the funny thing. That's the funny thing about this division right now at light heavyweight. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Glover somehow ends up winning the title. I mean, maybe it will come to an end against Santos, but maybe it won't. And one-legged Santos coming back after his injuries won't be the same, and Teixeira gets the jump on him. And maybe Teixeira gets the jump on a similarly aged Jan Blachowicz in the light heavyweight division and becomes champion, but still. Doesn't get nearly enough credit is my point. Teixeira's number 4 on my list. Moving on to number 3. Is this my number 3? Yes, it is my number 3. Alexander Volkanovski. I'm just going to go out there and say it, okay? I don't care anymore. I know a lot of Holloway fans don't like how this constantly comes up, it seems, on my live streams and sometimes in my videos as well. Alexander Volkanovski is one of the most underrated guys purely because it feels like he isn't rated at all. These other guys are rated, but I don't feel like they're rated enough. But Volkanovski's a world champion. He's the best featherweight in the world right now, and people are acting like he doesn't exist. It's crazy to me, and they're talking about, Zabit and Korean Zombie. Don't get me wrong, I think those guys would have a great chance against Volkanovski, but still, he is the featherweight champion of the world. He is the guy that beat Max Holloway at featherweight and broke his win streak, and then, by the way, did it twice and beat him more significantly the second time if he didn't get knocked down. Fair enough, Max Holloway knocked him down. By the way, none of those are scored as official knockdowns because he only dropped to one knee, and that's not an official knockdown, but we'll call it a knockdown just for the Holloway fans out there. I do agree that they stole Holloway the first and second round, but he was getting outstruck in those rounds. Don't get me wrong, he won those first and second rounds in the rematch, but Volkanovski beat him in the other 3 rounds. I'll read you the stats right now, okay? Volkanovski got 3 takedowns in this fight in all of the later rounds. Volkanovski outlanded him 25-15. That's a double digit strike differential in the 3rd round. Number 4, 34-24. That's a 10 strike difference. That's a double digit significant strike difference, and he took him down. Round 5, 37-23. Significant strikes, not total strikes, significant strikes, and he took him down. No denying Volkanovski won the last 3 rounds and nobody gives him credit for doing so, and it annoys me. I feel bad for Volkanovski because he always has to explain himself, and every interviewer asked him the question about the controversy. He outstruck him to a higher strike differential than he did in the first fight with Holloway. The first fight, in my opinion, was a little bit closer. But okay then, all good. He also beat Jose Aldo, by the way, and almost tripled him on strikes. No, in fact, over-tripled him on strikes in that fight. Fair enough, Aldo looked a little bit gun-shy, but maybe you could blame that on Volkanovski. Being such an awkward style, someone on Aldo's height that threw a lot of feints in that fight, didn't really commit to too much, and just picked Aldo apart from range. He looked amazing in the Aldo fight. Destroyed him in Brazil. So if Aldo's not going to be motivated for that fight, I don't know when he is going to be. In front of his home crowd, Volkanovski went out there and beat Aldo, tripled him on strikes over 3 rounds. In a 3-rounder. Aldo in a 5-rounder, like, there's some ways to win. In a 3-rounder against Aldo, it is tricky to get the job done. And Volko did, and he also KO'd Chad Mendes on top of that. Moving on up the list. Thought I'd mention Volkanovski because no one gives him any credit whatsoever. But number 2 on my list is Stipe Miocic, the heavyweight champion of the world, the greatest heavyweight of all time in my opinion. People aren't calling him that, and it annoys me, and that's why he's number 2 on my list of most underrated UFC fighters right now in the UFC. He's so underrated. I don't understand how they keep doing this to him. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. He keeps winning against great guys. Look at this resume, and I'm just going to go through the championship resume for now, and then we'll get into the other stuff as well afterwards that he's done. Beat Fabricio Verdum, the guy who beat Cain Velasquez, but we make exclusives for Cain Velasquez because, he wasn't adjusted. Okay, cool. He got outstruck and then destroyed and caught with a knee and then got guillotined, but all good. He got beaten. Fabricio Verdum's a dangerous guy, but, we just give an excuse to Cain Velasquez. All good. Fabricio Verdum beat Cain Velasquez, whether you like it or not. Then Stipe Miocic KO'd him stiff. That happened. But people still want to talk about how Cain is like, but I don't know, Cain in his time. But Cain lost. And Stipe beat the guy that beat him right after, nearly. So, I don't know what the problem is here. Stipe beat Fabricio Verdum, by the way, by first round KO with relative ease. Completely destroyed him in the first round. Then he went on to beat Junior Dos Santos, rid himself of the loss in his career and take away that one basically and do what GSP did to Matt Hughes and Matt Serra and beat JDS. KO him in the first round as well. Really, really impressively. Destroy him in the first round. Then Francis Ngannou, to this day, I believe this is the only Ngannou loss in the UFC because no one won the Lewis versus Ngannou fight. Let's be real. Although Lewis did outland him a couple of those rounds. Let's be real here. I think it's fair to say that Stipe Miocic probably has the only real win over Ngannou in the UFC, and people are still saying that Ngannou is going to be a big favourite in the rematch. I think that Stipe probably beats him in the rematch. He's got great wrestling, he's got great head movement, he's got a phenomenal chin, he can take a shot better than anyone else in the heavyweight division, even though he's been KO'd. I like Stipe Miocic's chances in the Ngannou rematch, and no one else seems to. But it's just really funny how this keeps happening to Stipe. He loses to DC. People start naming DC as the greatest heavyweight of all time. People start making the argument that DC is the greatest heavyweight of all time. Okay? Stipe beats him in the rematch. GOAT conversation over. No media members talking about who the greatest heavyweight of all time is. Becomes the 2-time heavyweight world champion, which was only done by Cain Velasquez before him, and only beaten by Randy Couture, who was the 3-time heavyweight champion before that. So Stipe ticks one more box off the list. Now he's a 2-time world champion. First of all, he broke the championship record. Now he's a 2-time world champion. No, okay, cool. Trilogy comes round between him and DC. This is for the greatest heavyweight of all time. Stipe wins. Well, Fedor, and, Arlovsky is up there, I guess, and then all of these other people come out of the woodwork. If DC would have beat Stipe in the trilogy, people would have named him the GOAT without question in the MMA media. They sleep on Stipe so much. He dominates, other than DC, who's a dangerous guy at light heavyweight as well, and he finished DC. And then he beat him by decision, which some would say is even more difficult. Like, I thought Stipe's big chance was to TKO DC, not beat him in a tactical decision over 5 rounds where he gets it done. And he got eye-poked about 10 times throughout that trilogy and only got one chance to land one back. Stipe is so underrated. And then you look outside of the championship resume, Andre Arlovsky, Mark Hunt. This is not now. This is not Justin Willis beating Mark Hunt. This is 2015. Beat Andre Arlovsky. This is not nowadays people beating Arlovsky. This is back then, okay? Or still not in their prime, I'll give you that. But, Arlovsky was up there when Stipe beat him. Mark Hunt was up there in the rankings when Stipe beat him. Then he beat Gabriel Gonzaga. You know, then he beat Roy Nelson, and this was in 2013, where Nelson was still up there. Okay, he was still relevant in the UFC and beating good guys. And Stipe dominated him, and no one says a thing. It's very strange because he lost to Stefan Struve. He's beat everyone else who's beaten him other than Struve. Without the Struve win, he's a belt division above, away from reaching GSP status and maybe a couple more title defenses. No one gives him credit. Craziness. Moving on to my most underrated fighter in the UFC, Jan Blachowicz. I have to give him this. I have to give him this because I swear it's criminal. It is really criminal. I know I talk about Volkanovski being a little bit disrespected and maybe Stipe gets a little bit underrated as well. But these are champions and Jan Blachowicz just gets ignored like he isn't there. It's weird. It's weird. Like he didn't just go out there and not just beat Dominic Reyes and catch him in the second round, but go out there and completely outland Dominic Reyes, start to finish, and then finish him in the second round. This wasn't Jan Blachowicz coming back in the second and landing a big shot on Dominic Reyes' chin. This was Blachowicz outlanding him in the first, outlanding him in the second, Reyes going for broke, and Jan Blachowicz gets what he wants and KOs him stiff. And this is a Dominic Reyes that beat John Jones, and people act like Jones can just waltz back to the light heavyweight title and get a win over Jan Blachowicz. It's crazy to me. Jan Blachowicz beat Corey Anderson, got that loss off of his resume. That was a bad loss on his list to lose to Corey Anderson all the way back when he did. Now he's got it off his list, and he beat Corey Anderson. Very well done. Dominated him in the first round by KO, by the way. Dominated. First round KO. Corey Anderson beat a bunch of guys, including Glover Teixeira, not too long ago within his recent win streak before Jan Blachowicz did that to him. And Glover Teixeira is also on this list. Jan Blachowicz KOs him in the first round. Nothing. Polish power, cool. Everyone makes the memes, but the MMA media doesn't get behind him. This is mainly focused on the MMA media and the casual fans. I think as all UFC fans, we understand all of these guys are savages, but they just don't get the same treatment, okay? Maybe it's because they're nice guys, a lot of these guys on the list, and they don't talk trash. Maybe that's a huge deal because it seems like everyone on this list has that in common, I'll be honest with you guys. I just don't get it. He beat Jacare Souza. That's a really good win. And not only did he beat Jacare Souza, they say it was a split decision. He quadrupled Jacare in the first round on significant strikes. He almost doubled Jacare in the second, 15-9. Not almost doubled, but you know what I mean. Doubled Jacare Souza, over doubled him in the third. 17-1 in the fourth round and 15-1 in the fifth round. He won every single round against Jacare, and they somehow found a way to give 2 of those rounds. One person gave it 3 of those rounds to Jacare. It's criminal. Jan Blachowicz dominated him, and Jacare beat Weidman, who's currently top 10 at middleweight. These are relevant wins for Jan Blachowicz to be getting, and still no credit. Beat Luke Rockhold, first round or second round KO. Destroyed him, legendary Polish power. He got KO'd by Thiago Santos, fair play. Beat Nikita Krylov. Beat Jimmy Manuwa. Beat Jared Cannonier. Again. Top middleweight. If he wins against Whittaker, he'll be fighting for the belt. Beat Devin Clark, which now is actually a pretty good win. Judging by the way Devin Clark's looking. The resurrection is real. Okay? Beat Ilir Latifi. Was the only guy to make Gustafsson shoot takedowns like a bitch. Let's be real. Look at that fight. Yeah, Blachowicz was doing really good on the feet. And then Gustafsson just shot for his life in those second and third rounds. But yeah, Jan Blachowicz was beating Gustafsson on the feet and doing real well against him. No one talks about him. It's interesting. And that's the end of my video. Those are my top 5 most underrated fighters in the UFC. I hope you agree with me. If there's anyone else I missed out, let me know in the comment section below. Goodbye. See you later.